200 million euros. That is a real number written into a real contract. The price a rival team would have to pay to take Tadej Pogačar away from UAE. It is what the people who employ him, the people who know his value better than anyone alive, have put in writing that he is worth. And here is what those same people actually pay him: 8 million euros a year. Now, 8 million is not a small number. It is genuinely the largest salary in the history of professional cycling. No bike rider has ever been paid more than this man is being paid right now. It is also nowhere near what he is worth, and the next 16 minutes are going to prove that to you using nothing but the sports zone arithmetic. Start here. This July, Pogačar climbed Alpe d'Huez in 35 minutes and 27 seconds, the fastest ascent in the history of the Tour de France, breaking a record that had stood since the Epo era. For producing the most valuable half hour in modern cycling, his salary paid him about 540 euros. Cristiano Ronaldo earns that in roughly 1 minute. So this is how bike riders actually get paid: the minimum wages, the prize money you don't keep, the contracts nobody publishes. It's what's really on Pogačar's payslip. It's the teenager who has just been offered more than him. And it's the fallen American who out-earned him 3-1 20 years ago. Start with the machine, because cycling's money works like no other sports. Football sells tickets, Formula One sells broadcast rights and race fees. Cycling gives its product away. The roadside is free. There is no stadium, no gate, no season ticket. The Tour de France does sell its television rights for a fortune, but that money belongs to the race's owner, ASO, not to the teams providing the show. And teams cannot sell riders either. There is no transfer market, no fee when a star changes jersey. Strip all that away, and a professional cycling team has essentially one source of income left: the sponsor whose name is on the shirt. A World Tour team is not really a business. It is a billboard with a bus, and billboards have budgets. This season, the entire men's World Tour, 18 teams, more than 500 of the best riders on earth, runs on about 663 million euros combined. A single top Premier League football club turns over more on its own. Inside that world, the official minimum wage at cycling's top level is 44,000 euros. A London Underground driver earns more. The average World Tour salary is around 500,000, and prize money is close to a myth. The Tour de France pays its winner 500,000 euros, which by a tradition older than most teams he gives away, split between teammates and staff. This July, UAE won nearly everything worth winning, and the entire squad's 3-week haul came to 832,000 euros. The Wimbledon champion collects 4 times that in a fortnight, personally. So where do Pogačar's 8 million come from? First, an honesty clause. Cycling contracts are secret. There is no published wage bill, so every figure you're about to hear is the best reporting in the sport, most of it from La Gazzetta dello Sport, which broke the deal. Here is the payslip. Base salary, a reported 8 million euros a year, guaranteed to 2030, 50 million over 6 years. On top of that, performance bonuses, a reported 1 million for winning the Tour de France, 500,000 each for the Giro or the Vuelta, 250,000 for the Worlds. Then the personal empire. His own sponsorship portfolio, separate from the team: Colnago bikes, DMT shoes, Emmet helmets, Continental tires, Enovit nutrition, even his country's tourist board, worth up to another 2 million a year. Total, in his best season, around 12 million euros. And around the edges of that payslip, 2 details tell you the market has stopped making sense. 1. The criteriums. The small exhibition races after the Tour are how stars have cashed in for a century. Pogačar's reported appearance fee is now 100,000 euros, and the traditional crits have simply stopped booking him. In the words of one Belgian organizer, we simply can't afford him. The winner of the Tour de France has priced himself out of his own victory lap. And 2, the number this video opened with, That €200 million buyout clause is not a transfer fee. Nobody expects it to be paid. No team on earth could pay it. It is a wall, built so that the question never has to be asked out loud, which means UAE have quietly done something no accountant ever asked them to do. They have written down what they think he is actually worth. Remember that, because at the end, we are going to hold it up against what they give him. Now, what does UAE actually get for the biggest salary in cycling history? Cycling keeps a scoreboard. UCI ranking points are earned at every race on the calendar, from the Tour of Flanders to a wet Tuesday in Poland. They are how the sport measures who is producing. As of this August, Tadej Pogačar has just over 11,300 points. Second in the world is Remco Evenepoel, a double Olympic champion, a world champion on 7,300. The best rider on earth is not just ahead of the next best, he is 54% ahead. But individual rivals are the wrong comparison. The UCI also ranks teams, every squad's 20 best riders combined. Count Pogačar as a team of one, and on this August numbers, he would rank 6th in the world. One man, outscoring the entire Ineos Grenadiers operation, the empire that ruled cycling for a decade, by more than 2,000 points. One man beating the 20 best riders of Sudor Quick-Step combined, beating Movistar, beating EF. Of the 17 other World Tour teams, 13 score fewer points than he does alone. And against Lidl Trek, 30 riders on a reported €45 million budget, he lands within 15% of the entire roster by himself, or price it per victory. In 2024, he won 25 races. At his salary, that is €280,000 per win. A single Premier League victory cost the club paying for it tens of millions. Even his own employer has stopped pretending the salary reflects the value. His team principal, Mauro Gianetti, said it in plain words. What he's doing for Abu Dhabi is worth much more than the races he wins. Which raises the question this video was really made to answer. Has any cyclist ever been paid more? September 1989. Greg LeMond, 1 month after winning the Tour de France by 8 seconds, signs with the French Team Z for $5.5 million over 3 years. The first $1 million a year contract in the history of the sport. The benchmark he shattered, Sean Kelly's salary, was about $800,000. Adjust LeMond's landmark deal for inflation and it comes to roughly €4.5 million today. About what Wout van Aert earns now, sit with that. 37 years of television growth and the very top of cycling's pay scale has not even doubled in real money. Through the 2010s, the ceiling crept up on 2 different currencies. Winning and fame, Peter Sagan, 3 straight world titles and the most marketable grin in the sport reached the reported $5 million a year, with another $2 million in personal sponsorship on top. And in 2021, Chris Froome showed the other thing cycling does with money. Israel's startup nation signed him, 35 years old, 2 years after a career-shattering crash, for $5.5 million a year, briefly the biggest salary in the sport. Grand Tours won since, none. Wins of any kind since, none. His own team boss, asked publicly whether Froome was worth the salary, answered, absolutely not. Remember that, because it completes the argument, cycling is perfectly capable of overpaying. It just overpays the past and underpays the present. But the real ceiling, the one this sport does not like to talk about, was set 20 years ago, and it was not a salary. At his peak, around 2005, Forbes put Lance Armstrong's income at $28 million a year. The team's salary was the smallest part. $17.5 million a year came from endorsements and speaking fees alone. Nike, Trek, Oakley, Budweiser's parent company, a cancer comeback story that corporate America could not buy enough of. Even his Tour victories were financially engineered. His team's owners insured his win bonuses with a Texas firm called SCA Promotions. Win the Tour and the insurance pays out. it paid him $12 million across the streak. And when SCA finally refused the last $5 million because a book had just alleged in forensic detail that Armstrong was doping, he took them to arbitration and squeezed out $7.5 million bonus plus interest. His contract, the lawyers noted, said nothing about doping. Put Armstrong's peak into today's money and it is over 40 million euros a year, 3.5 times Pogačar at his absolute best, so no. The best rider of all time is not the best paid cyclist of all time. It's not close. That title belongs to a man who built his fortune on the American market on a story and on a lie. And in October 2012, it took about 48 hours to unbuild. The anti-doping report landed, Nike walked. Within days, every sponsor was gone. An estimated $150 million in future earnings deleted. 3 years later, an arbitration panel made him hand back the bonus money too, $10 million, for lying under oath the first time round. The biggest income cycling ever generated for one man was never really cycling's money, it was America's, and it left with the truth. Meanwhile, back in the present, the market underneath Pogačar is inflating fast. In 4 years, the combined budgets of the World Tour have jumped from 430 million euros to 663. The average top flight salary has more than doubled since 2011. 65 riders in today's peloton earn $1 million or more. And in June, the whole scale received a new data point. Paul Sixas, French, 19 years old, already ranked number 5 in the world. And according to the transfer reporter Daniel Benson, the subject of an offer from Pinarello Q36.5, the team bankrolled by mining billionaire Ivan Glasenberg, worth 13 million euros a season. 13 million. For a teenager who has never won a Grand Tour. When that number broke, the Lantern Rouge podcast, people who watch more bike racing than anyone alive, needed about 10 seconds to connect it to the man at the top of the sport.
Can I be honest? I think a lot of people are shocked by the 13 million in that sentence, but I think you and I think that Tadej Pogačar is criminally underpaid in this sport. So this number shouldn't be a shock in that regard. It is a shock if you do compare it to most likely the salaries of Jonas Vingegaard and so forth, but
criminally underpaid. And notice what the 13 million would be buying, not results, probability. The chance that Sexas one day becomes the next Pogačar. So what is the actual Pogačar worth? Here is one way to see it. Every May, Forbes ranks the highest paid athletes on the planet. Come down the list. At the top, Cristiano Ronaldo, $300 million this year, Canelo Alvarez, 170, Messi, 140, LeBron James, 138, and keep going because the list is 50 names long. Golfers, quarterbacks, drivers, fighters, most of whom will never be the best in the world at anything. The 50th and final name on it is the tennis player Jannik Sinner, who earned $54.6 million. That is the floor. The very last man to scrape onto the list of the highest paid athletes on earth still earns more than 4 times what the greatest cyclist in history earns. And that is Pogačar's total income, salary, bonuses, sponsors, everything. Tadej van Garderen, former Tour de France rider, now a team boss in the sport. Put the American frame on it. In the NBA, Pogačar's money gets you, quote, a solid 3&D player, probably somebody coming off the bench. One website found his exact salary peers. On $8 million a year, the best cyclist alive is level with Fulham's goalkeeper. And a backup power forward for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And before you object that cycling is simply a small sport, Van Garderen again. Every July, the Tour de France owns a clear month of the world's sporting calendar. The NBA finished in June. Football hasn't kicked off. You can't tell me the viewership is not there, he said. Cycling is a global thing that everyone's watching. His conclusion, on the record, Tadej Pogačar, for all the star power he brings to the sport, is massively underpaid. So if everyone can see it, why doesn't somebody simply pay him more? Because of the machine from the start of this video. A footballer's wage is priced off revenue, tickets, rights, shirts, money the club really collects and the player really drives. A cyclist's wage is priced off a marketing budget. It can only ever be a slice of what a sponsor believes the advertising is worth, and that logic has a hard ceiling and a floor that can vanish. Right now, half the teams in the Tour de France are searching for a title sponsor to keep existing. The one team that broke the scale did it by not being a business at all. UAE's budget, a reported 60 million euros, the biggest in cycling, is nation branding, underwritten by a state. And state money does not think like sponsor money. When the Sexas offer broke 30 million from a billionaire's team, the Lanterne Rouge duo explained the new physics of it better than any economist.
To a multi-billionaire, for these people, for a sovereign wealth fund, who are not looking for a specific commercial return, 13 million versus 7 million, what does it matter? They're not interested in some commercial return, they're interested in winning. They're doing this to win the biggest races. Or at least
be competitive.
Yeah, to be competitive in the biggest races.
That is the market Tadej Pogačar actually lives in. Not a sport pricing his output, but a handful of billionaires and states pricing their own ambitions. Cycling's establishment has noticed, and its instinct is telling. The UCI has approved the principle of a budget cap, a ceiling to slow the arms race. Van Garderen's answer runs the other way. Let teams take a share of the television money their stars generate. If you want Tadej there, you're going to have to pay us. One of those futures pays riders closer to what they are worth. The other writes the underpayment into the rulebook. So, the ledger honestly, is Pogačar on the biggest salary in cycling history? Yes. 8 million a year, 50 million guaranteed. Is he the best paid cyclist of all time? No. 20 years ago, Armstrong's peak was 3 of him, in money that came from outside the sport and vanished with the lie. And is the biggest salary in cycling history still an underpayment? Run it one last time. UAE pays a reported 60 million a year for the best team on earth, and 1 man on 8 produces almost half of its points. Ineos pays 45 million for a squad that scores less than he does alone. A rival just offered 13 million for a teenager who might one day be him. And then there is the number we started with, 200 million euros, 25 years of his salary to take him away. Put those two figures side by side and you have the entire argument in one contract. The people who know exactly what Tadej Pogačar is worth wrote it down and then agreed a price with him 25 times smaller. That is the gap. It is not a scandal and nobody is a villain in it. It is just what happens when the best athlete in a sport is paid out of an advertising budget instead of the money he generates. UAE never have to pay the 200 million. That is precisely why they were willing to write it. The best rider in the sport's history is on the biggest salary cycling has ever produced. And he might still be the biggest bargain in world sport. Both of those things are true at once. So, one question for the comments. What is the fair number? If you ran a team or a country, what would you actually pay for Tadej Pogačar? Put your figure below.